I think we'll go ahead and get started to make good use of our time here today. So hello and welcome everyone to today's panel discussion, Amplifying Black Voices for a Sustainable Economic Future. My name is Leslie Marshall and I am the Associate Director of the Center for Sustainable Business and the Katz Graduate School of Business and College of Business Administration at the University of Pittsburgh. The CSB was founded 1 year ago this month to help companies learn how to transition to more sustainable business models. In corporate settings, people often link sustainability to what they call the triple bottom line, or focus on creating value for people, planet, and profit. But at Pitt, we define sustainability as balancing equity, environment, and economics so that current and future generations can thrive. In both of those cases, it's the people piece, it's the equity piece that needs to be a stronger driver of our economic and environmental decision making. So today's event is part of our effort to advance discussion and action in this space. So this event is the third in a series of events that's co-hosted by the Center for Sustainable Business, along with the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation, Pitt Purchasing, and the Pitt Office of Sustainability to advance racial equity in sustainable procurement, purchasing, community engagement, and economic development. And I'm grateful to work with an outstanding group of individuals who helped to make this happen. Gina Kowalczyk, who's the co-director of the Mascaro Center for Sustainable Innovation. Welcome, Gina. Jennifer Barnes, who's the supplier diversity and sustainability coordinator in Pitt Purchasing in the office of the CFO. Welcome, Jennifer. Aurora Sherrard, the director of the Pitt Office of Sustainability. Welcome, Aurora. And Alyssa Martinek, the sustainability coordinator for the Center for Sustainable Business, who was integral to making this event happen today as well. And a final thank you to Ash Brady from Katz IT for supporting us during this event. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all of us when I express my gratitude to our panelists for sharing their time today, as well as their expertise. I know this is a conversation that many of us have been looking forward to for a very long time. So before I introduce our moderator, I want to say a few quick words about technical logistics for this event, so we're all on the same page. We are recording the event, as you can see on your screen, and we'll be making the recording available as soon as possible on the Pitt CSB YouTube channel. So we'll share that link out and encourage folks to share that as well for anyone who may not have been able to join us at this particular time today. And our moderator, Amber Thompson, has prepared questions for our panelists, but as audience members, anyone who's listening in, you're welcome to submit any questions that you might have, you might like to see answered using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If there's time, our moderator will work to get those questions answered live. And now, without any further delay, I'm honored to introduce our moderator for this event, Amber Thompson, who's the founder of the Leaders of Change Consulting Group. Amber has advocated for disenfranchised and underserved populations since she was a young girl. She's been working on behalf of underrepresented populations within the nonprofit and private sectors. She saw an opportunity to increase equity throughout businesses and communities using radical methods. She founded a change management consulting company that provides organizational development, marginalized community engagement, and equitable service design. Amber's been working with us to develop the concept and questions for this event for months, and I am very eager to pass this event into her extremely capable hands. So with that, Amber, it is all you.
Thanks, Leslie. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Like Leslie said, we've been working at this for months. I'm so excited to be on this panel with these lovely women, all of whom I look up to, all of whom I've been following their work and just trying to work alongside and be in partner with them as well. So just to get it started, I want to introduce our first first panelist, Nisha Blackwell. Nisha is a Homewood native and Westinghouse School graduate. She's the founder and CEO of Knotsland Bow Ties. It's a social enterprise that sources, rescues, and repurposes discarded textiles into stylish bow ties, intentionally made through providing flexible work to local and underrepresented populations. Welcome, Nisha. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Raynice Kelly. Raynice is an Oliver High School and Bidwell Training Center alumni, completed the horticulture and technology program. She began her agricultural career as a staff at Brentwood's Greenhouse. Upon landing a position with Grow Pittsburgh as a school gardens assistant, she stuck with the organization for 2 years and is now a full-time learning garden educator. During that time, she continued to build on her passion and completed an herbal course certified by the Herbalist of Stone Fruit Community. Raynice is also board member of the Hilltop Urban Farm, a member of the Black Urban Gardeners, PA Farmers Union, Western PA Young Farmers Coalition, and recently taken a seat on the working committee of Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. Welcome, Raynice. Thank you for joining us as well. I love how you all are representing your high schools. These are local schools for anyone who's not from Pittsburgh. Next, we're gonna introduce Camille Scanley. She is the founder and CEO of Cocopreneur and the co-founder of Greenwood Week Pittsburgh. She's Cocopreneur is a Black business consultancy firm based and focused on the greater Pittsburgh area. And as the co-founder of Greenwood Week Pittsburgh, that's a Black business conference. She created Cocopreneur's directory to compile and organize Pittsburgh's Black businesses and provide consumers with businesses in their neighborhoods that they could support and provide Black entrepreneurs with the traffic they need to flourish. Most recently, she raised over $100,000 to aid Black businesses affected by COVID-19. Welcome, Camille. Thank you. And last but not least, we have Diamante Walker. Diamante is the Deputy Executive Director of Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. Diamante joined the agency in 2017 and quickly becoming the driving force behind URA's MWBE strategy. Her commitment to the advancement of equitable development is demonstrated through the administration of the URA's MWBE program, compliance monitoring, reporting functions, and other economic inclusion-focused initiatives. With a career span of more than 15 years in the for-profit sector and having recently served as a business development program manager in the nonprofit sector, Diamante understands the complex challenges we face as a region when trying to effectuate meaningful change in neighborhoods. Diamante offers a serious look at what can happen when we expand the work of economic development beyond metrics, goals, buzzwords, to create impactful experiences that empower people while transforming place. Thanks, Diamante. Thank you for joining us today. As you all can see, based on their bios and profiles, this is why we are here today. This is a great group to talk about the conversations we want to have in regards to sustainable economic development. So getting it started, Camille, would you like to share with us why we're talking about race and racism in connection to sustainable business?
Oh, okay. Let's just be frank. Like when you talk about Black people in particular and our history in this country, we're the only people that came over here as part of the cargo list. So we are considered a resource, like our labor and our bodies are considered resources for this country. Same for other demographics of folks, some of the indigenous population, a lot of our Latin American population that comes from South America are considered labor. So when you talk about exploiting that labor, that all goes into sustainability. So are you abusing the bodies that do the labor that makes your company run? So that's why race is a part of sustainability, right? The same way that you can exhaust your resources or try to get, cheaper resources and not pay for quality materials, you can not pay for quality labor by not taking care of your labor force, right? And that's a way of exploiting them, and it does a disservice to the entire environment. When you abuse bodies and they cannot feed themselves, when they cannot take care of themselves and have health care, all those things go into sustainability, and that's all a part of you being a sustainable business. If your labor force cannot take care of themselves because of the wages that you pay, you're not as sustainable as you think you are. Is that kind of it? Okay.
That's all of it. Thank you. Exploitation is definitely something that is lacking in every conversation in regards to economic development. When we talk about increasing the minimum wage, when we talk about paying people for the work that they do, giving credit to people for the work that they do, I feel like the sustainability space definitely does not amplify, using what we're here today, the people that have set the foundation for the work that folks who haven't done it are taking credit for and receiving compensation for. So thanks, Camille. And even expanding onto how we become more equitable in this space. Nisha, would you like to talk about how Knott's Land is helping to service the folks that are being exploited and are not being represented fairly?
Yes, Camille hit it on the nose when it comes to fair and equitable pay. That's really the lane of which Knott's Land stays in. We have built our business model off of the principles of circular economy within sustainability and sustainable business, and that has been built in cooperation and in collaboration with our workforce. So every single thing that we have built, from our training programs to our pay structure, I mean, it's all through feedback and like what is fair and how making sure that we're providing. I mean, the people are really first in Knott's Land, and I think it's challenging for the scope of sustainable business as it catches up to realize that, because it's always been, for me, from my lens, about like green building and development and this like higher level. So, this idea of circular economics and circularity in repurposing and reclaiming materials comes from just my want to support and be about community. And so I like to hashtag Knott's Land as like a community brand, because we are built in community with the people that we serve, and we grow really slow. We haven't been we're not this company that's like scaling and growing and selling 1 million products, because we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is fair and constantly going back and reevaluating our practices to make sure that everyone is okay as we grow.
Thank you, Nisha, for explaining that and bringing cooperative economics into the conversation early on as well. Again, another conversation that's not discussed enough when we're looking at economic development and addressing the needs of underrepresented communities. Raynice, you are part of so many collectives of Black folks who are working in the sustainability space in the region. How do you feel race is part of this conversation, and how do you feel it could be encouraged more?
I feel like race is, as far as agriculture and sustainability, it is the main topic alongside with land access and capital. When you think of agriculture, the first thing you think of, or you think of farming and gardening, you think of a white man. You don't think of like Camille mentioned, our historical work and what we've been doing just as a whole. And that has been our, footstone for sustainability. This is how we've thrived as a people, growing our own food and just having gardens. So when we talk about race and we don't mention that we have been in this field for years, hundreds of years, sustainability is what that is. That's what we've been doing, and it just needs to be recognized without acknowledging that there are, even though the percentages are small now, without acknowledging and recognizing that it's a disrespect to the people who are here and are paving a way and still making an impact, trying to dismantle some of the myths of us not doing it at all and reclaiming what has been ours, because a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the skills, a lot of the tools that are used and shared have been created by us.
Oh, can I add on to that too? Because that makes me think
Definitely.
about, it makes me think about the fact that, like you said, when a lot of African people were brought to the country, they were laborers, like, and they worked in fields, literal fields. And that's what they knew. And when you talk about sustainability, even to this day, Black people, namely poor Black people, are the most sustainable people you'll ever find. When you talk about money management, I would like to believe that poor Black people in particular manage money better than anybody else. The fact that someone can have $4.75 to their name, they can make a full meal, says something. Or they can stretch this money to, you know what I mean? So it's just like the way that we look at Black people in regard to economics, in regard to sustainability, is really funny, because those are the people who tend to be the most sustainable. You know, they can recycle things in their house a million times. We don't throw away giant eagle trash bags. They become shower caps. They become lunch bags. They, you know what I'm saying? So we do this like naturally, not naturally, but instinctually, because of a culture that we've lived. You know, we live a very sustainable culture for a lot of poor Black folks. And I think that it's funny that that never gets brought up, you know? So, and then when you talk about like agriculture, we had entire universities dedicated to agriculture and tech. Like we had agriculture and tech schools, colleges and universities dedicated to the agriculture field. I think Penn State originally was an A&T school. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like we have this history, and it's funny because a lot of people can sustain themselves and their families through agriculture, and that's kind of been taken away from us. And it's something that we knew so well.
And I just wanted one more thing, because I just, me being in school gardens and going into our schools and teaching the kids about growing, it really hurts my heart to hear some of the kids say, I'm not doing this slave work. I'm not doing that. I'm not no slave. And it's just like, there are so many wrongs with that statement, and it's such a teaching moment, because one is like, okay, what do you know about our history as slaves? And then two, it's how don't you understand that this is a sustainability factor that's going to help you thrive in life? What better way do you want to save money than to not have to spend so much of it on food? So I agree. It's definitely funny how we don't look at the things that we instinctively do that are sustainable and keep us in a pristine condition.
Yeah, and to add on that, and definitely something I want to bring up, was people of color, Black and brown people, do this out of survival. This isn't something to profit or to get credit or expand our networks. This is literally to live, eat, and breathe. This isn't something that we are looking to make a living off of. We want to live off of our labor, and the fact that it is so like profitable for folks who don't quite honestly need it is why we are here today. That is exactly where this conversation needs to go to.
And Amber, if I could just really quick chime in on the fact that, like, you know, the people who don't need it versus the people who need it. There was this moment in life where, you know, we thrifted my entire life. My grandma would go to thrift shops and get like bags of clothes for the whole family. And, you know, we'd fix things up and we share them with the community. And I've still been thrifting like all through my 20s before I started a business. And then there became this like surge of like, now thrifting is cool. And now it's hard to get nice clothes and thrifting and so back then when I was thrifting, we would get really good finds, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is like a $5, you know, Vera Wang blouse or something. And nowadays that Vera Wang blouse is still being sold in the market for like $500. And that is a really, really scary thing for the people who actually need to purchase clothes, and that upbringing of folks who rely on these thrifting and Goodwill and Salvation Army things, and you have this culture that goes and selects and sorts through everything and resells it. And I'm all about get your money, it's a business, but where is the line and the balance?
Ooh, I have so many thoughts on thrifting as a medium to big size girl myself. There are so many spaces that thought even takes me to. It takes me to the folks living in vans right now too, right? Where we've gentrified our food. We're going to gentrify our clothes, and now we're going to gentrify our living, right? Now we're going to make it cool to buy a van and live in a van and not even actually understand how paying $30,000 for a van and then for another $30,000 for renovations is so luxury. It's still, there are people who are living out of their vehicles that they didn't intentionally uproot themselves. And again, that line, I don't think we can find that line until we start having discussions, right? And saying, here's the things that are happening. Here's how you're perpetuating, and this is how you need to start processing what you need to do differently to not be part of the problem. I'm going to
if I could add on to that, and first of all, thank you for having me here today. But this is such a profound conversation, because I've always thought of Black people as the original sustainable innovators. And I think a lot of what's happened is that, and somebody spoke about it, about survivalism and scarcity, and how the privilege of, sustainability is now seen as this white field, and folks are working really hard to be inclusive and to be diverse. But, so there's this notion of folks who are dabbling in sustainability, one, because it's important and there are pillars and UN SDGs that are built around this stuff, and it seems like a luxurious thing to do. And for Black folks, it has been literally a way of survival and overcoming the thoughts around scarcity and the fear of scarcity. And so one of the things that I think is really important as we shift this conversation is that we understand that sustainability is about abundance, and it's about the creation of more abundance, and that we don't have these two disparate realities where Black people are sustainable because they're trying to survive, and everybody else is sustainable because they understand that the economics and the social fabric and the human fabric about that are really about evolution and permanency. And so I think that it's really, really important that when we think about, like Camille talked about, how we got to this country as property, as 3/5 of a person. If you look at us in sustainability, the way that we exist in sustainability is cognizant of that fraction, 3/5 of that complete whole. And so we've really got to focus on those other two pieces. And so that's why I'm really excited to have this conversation today. So very thought-provoking questions. I just want to thank you for the time and effort that went into this dialogue.
Thank you, Diamante, for talking about abundance. Ooh, what COVID taught me is the difference between scarcity and abundance, what it really truly means, and how we can change our lives and not look at scarcity as not having the materials, and abundance as in the skills that I have that I can live off of, right? But Diamante, would you, in regards to trying to talk about how we need to move from this space, or the disparities between Black folks and white folks in a space as that spectrum from one end to the other? In my research, a lot of this has to deal with language, and why is the language we use to talk about sustainability, and I put sustainability in quotations, versus basic needs, with respect to economic development? Why is talking about the language important?
Well, I think language matters because language sets the baseline assumptions, right? So that's how we all build consensus and agreement. We build it through common language. And so I think when sustainability and agriculture and anything green starts to be co-opted by academia, the language is going to start to become inaccessible. And I don't think that's by intent or design. It is just that, you know, people talk a lot about white supremacy, and and white supremacy is an issue, but I think the bigger issue that we have to contend with is white centrism, because it is the thing that folks don't see as being harmful. And so when we take the language away from Black people have been upcycling since the dawn of time. That's what we've been doing. And so when that starts to become quote unquote professionalized, and I know there's a little bit that we're going to talk about sustainability in terms of professionalism. And when we talk about that, we take it away from the grassroots indigenous understanding. And we start to co-opt it in a way that makes it profitable, that makes it beneficial, that corporations can then have really wonderful talking points and to be able to start to perform inclusion and sustainability. And so I think that there's a two-part thing here. I mean, we're all academics on this call, right? So we can talk the language and talk the lingo and, and use the vernacular. But I think that when you think about etymology is the root. It is where it came from, the Latin. And so when we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about language, the etymology probably, when you trace it back, goes back to Black people and how marginalized people, again, have sought to survive. And so as we professionalize it, I just want us to close the loop. It's all right to take it to another level and to start to add more resources to it. But when those resources don't reciprocate and don't return back to the folks who made the original investment, that's what inequity means. It means somebody made an original investment and it somehow got diverted and never came back to them tenfold. And that is the work of, systemic redress. That is when we talk about dismantling. If we're going to tear it down, we got to be able to replace it with something that is going to be more sustainable and more formidable moving forward. So I hope that I answered your question there. And if I didn't, I'm happy to, kind of converse about it a little bit more.
I just have one thing about Diamante and what she said. Where is our return on the investment? That's it. That's all.
No, Diamante, that was excellent, because my next question is, what is gained and lost right there? What's gained is not for us. It's not accessible to us. What's lost is that we developed this. We are the owners of this. We taught you, and now you've over certified it. You've over educated it. And I totally agree with, we can take this to another level. We can expand and make it better. But better for who? And if that first question isn't always on the front of your mind, it's easy to run off and go to academia and build this whole department and act like you developed this and invented it. Those are the scary conversations. I was working with a gentleman who is in landscaping, and he's like, I've been doing this since I was 5 years old, and he's from Mexico. And I had to get a certification to prove this. I had to do this. And he's like, I don't say I do sustainable landscaping. I do sustainable landscaping, though. Why would I say that? I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. So this conversation of over certifying something that is developed already and by a community, by demographics and populations of people.
Certification is the quickest way to circumvent ownership. So if you can make it certifiable, you can then claim it and own it, and that is the danger. And listen, there are Black professionals, there are Black academics who are who are doing a lot of research in this field. So I'm not undermining the value of that. I'm saying that sometimes we just deviate way too far from the original source. We will wake up and Tupac will be played by a white character. That's how these things happen, because you get so far away from the original source that what you see is a very skewed sense, a very skewed representation. And if you can certify it and you can own it and you can command the language around it, you can change it and make it whatever you want it to be. And so that is really the resistance, is to hold that space, to make sure that the language does not deviate away from the origination point, which is, and again, one more note, we get very comfortable with the labor of Black bodies. If you talk about picking cotton, the first image you see is it the image of an enslaved person, right? And then when you talk about sustainable growth and sustainable agriculture, that is not the image that you see, but that is the origination point. Those slaves figuring out a way to grow tobacco and grow cotton, and Black people and those industries still being in play and making a lot of money, and Black people have no economic viability around that when they created the methodology, or when we created the methodology.
And similar in the fashion space, in fast fashion, Black and brown people are the ones making the products, but they are the last ones to get any sort of support, healthcare, working conditions, and everything. While these brands are making billions of dollars on one end, they are sucking the resources of and the human resources of another culture, and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that in agriculture, like the lingo has definitely made it difficult for farmers to pursue things because it makes you feel automatically that the verbiage they're using, that the requirements they're saying you should have, the experience, the certifications. Like you said, there's people who have this experience. You can go into their neighborhood and somebody says, well, where can I go and get green peppers? And everybody will tell you, Mr. Johnson, so-and-so, because he's been doing it for years. But how is he supposed to translate that on paperwork to get the support he needs to make his small business or make his passion that he's been doing, his sustainable work, something that can be profitable for him? The language doesn't convey that type of interaction where it's easy for him to come and seek out that assistance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I definitely, and I want to get back to Mr. Wilson near the end of this because we have a question related to that. But I want to build up to how we get to making that profitable for Mr. Wilson. So we'll get to that near the end. But I just have a simple question for everyone on the call, and I'll answer it myself. Do you identify as a sustainable business? Do you identify as a person who works in the sustainability space? And I say no. While I do all these things, I say no. What do you all? How do you all identify yourself in this space? Nisha.
It took me a long time to even, I feel like I hear echo, but I don't like being in a box. What we do is it's so layered, and there's so many layers that I never really wanted to put a label on anything that we do. However, I remember, starting to get into my sustainability journey, and all of the lingo and, all the events were white centered and around this idea of like what sustainability looked like from a white lens. And I would have never and this was me actively trying to find a sustainable space. And, every time I would leave a conference or something, a workshop, as the only Black person, I would be like, none of this, I'm not sustainable, apparently. I just like to thrift and I like to remake things. So that doesn't make me sustainable. And it wasn't until I started leaning into, the passion behind sewing, the passion behind community, the passion behind thrifting and remaking, was when I started to see the terminology to define what I do, which was the upcycling. And as Diamante spoke to earlier, we've been upcycling since the beginning of time. So it didn't click to me as something that oh, I'm being sustainable because I'm upcycling. And it was more of, this is what I do because this is what I have done since forever. So as a sustainability professional, sure, I'm a lot of things. I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I'm a Black woman, I'm a lot of things, but I don't really like to put labels. So I wouldn't necessarily say I am a sustainability professional. I am a creative in this space, and I'm a creative in many spaces.
Thank you, Nisha. What do you say, Camille? Are you a sustainability professional?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't call myself that. If I was describing Cocopreneur and the work that I do, no, I do equitable work, right? I believe in paying people even more than what society says they're worth. So that's, in that regard, it would be defined as sustainable from at least what I define as sustainable, right? When I talk about that human equity part, when I talk about the human part of it, I believe in people. And I want people to feel like they matter. I want to pay people like they matter, so in that regard, I would call myself sustainable. Like I sustain people, I sustain communities. But like Nisha said, by the definitions put forth by the larger society, no. And I don't even care to be sustainable in that regard. Like, you know what I mean? Like for me, I make sure that if I am using a service or I would like a good, I'm paying this person what they're asking for. And sometimes I pay them more than what they ask for because sometimes they don't ask for what they deserve. So, you know what I mean? In that regard, I do sustainable work through, all the things that I engage in, but by the terms and definitions set forth, I would not call myself a sustainable business.
I think that one of the things I think that people, a favorite pastime is to figure out what box Black women fit in best. And so part of the question is, can Black women fit in the sustainability professional box? And it's like, if we deem that we should, we will, right? And so it's just knowing that you have that sovereignty and that autonomy to identify however you need to identify based on how you see your work. And so when I think about myself, I mean, I do sustainable work. I abide by, this notion that people are valuable, that the places that they inhabit and create are valuable, and so what I think most though, when I think of sustainability, for me, it's always about the future. It is always about the inheritance for those coming after us. And so if I am doing anything that cannot be bequeathed to the next generation better than how I found it, then I can't live up to the mantle of what it means to be sustainable, in my opinion. Now, am I a sustainability subject matter expert? No, I'm not. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought a couple of times about whether or not I should participate in this, because I am not, in the traditional sense, what you would call an SME on sustainability, And so, but I know that when I think about my value system, when I think about how I grew up, when I think about how I have to live right now and what I teach my children and what my mother taught me, that is all in alignment with what I believe we need to do for the future. So you're never going to see sustainability expert on any of my bios. That's not going to come up. Just know that when you receive my work, that the intention behind it was for it to be regenerative.
And I would just like to add, so in regards to what you're saying, how you don't identify as a sustainable SME, something that I think why we wanted you to be part of that is to expand the thoughts on what this space should include, because we have these SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that clearly ignore the social components, the community components, and siloed equity into one goal. That should be a goal for
cross-cutting measure.
Mm-hmm. And people perpetuate it by being a sustainable, sorry for my energy, but no, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry.
Don't apologize.
But, they perpetuate it through the SDGs, and then by identifying as a sustainable SME in a certain space and have totally siloed it. So, Rainice, I saved you for last because we know what space you're in, but I'm really interested to know.
Well, it was funny. So when we got the questions and I read that, I really had to stop and ask myself, I never answered that question. I know that the work I do falls under that category, but for me, I never felt like I lived up to that black and white description. What I was doing was some of the stuff we've already mentioned. It was a survival tactic. It was a means of just knowing what was in my community once before and it's no longer there now. It was a matter of what I feel is important. And I see that my community is working in other areas, the women who are on this call, they're doing work in areas that needs to be done, or redevelopment, small businesses, creating capital. And it's so where is the food at? Are we making sure our food is being as sustainable and as nutritionally valuable as the homes that we live in and the clothes that we wear and the money in our pocket? Are we eating well? And so I felt like it was only right that I fall suit into this category. And it sustained me. So that's just where it went. But like everyone else has mentioned on this call, I couldn't just proudly say, you know, I'm a sustainability expert in this, and because from some of the spaces I've been in, like Nisha mentioned, leaving rooms where no one looked like me, nothing that we talked about was relatable to me. The information that they were sharing, I couldn't just walk out of that room and go and follow up with these people the next day. I already knew that I had a whole process to go through before I would get some work done. So it's hard to agree to that, but I know that the people who I work for, who I do this for, understand that the mission is to be sustainable, that the goal is to ultimately give back and do a full circle, because here we are on this call, and I know, like I mentioned, connecting us all, that after that we have kids, we have cousins, we have so and so, and so it's not enough to just have this conversation here. It's about how do we continue that on.
Wait, I know
Yeah,
we're
kind of.
time. Who was that, Nisha?
Yeah, I was just
Okay,
going to piggyback on that and say all the comments and say basically it comes back to this idea that this is a way of life, and it's how we were raised, it's the communities that we were embedded in. And so when we get into a world that asks us to label that or you know, put that in a box, but from a business perspective, we often have to put ourselves in certain boxes and form our language to fit in certain boxes to get anything. So that, I mean, the larger question is how many times do you have to modify what you do to fit within these different systems that say, like, we will support you if you are this, and that's it.
Amber can speak to that too, but like I think about, like, when we're even looking at the screen right now, you know, by different definitions, I would say we're all in sustainable spaces, because I feel like everybody on this call can feed another person on this call, like feed the work that we do, that in turn feeds the community in some way, literally or figuratively feeds the community. And I think for me, that's the human part of sustainability is the only part for me, if that makes sense. Like, that is, everything else is, you know, an auxiliary part of it, but the human part of it is the central part of sustainability for me. If I am not being mindful of how the work that I do impacts people, then I'm not doing it right. Like I'm doing something wrong. If I am exploiting labor, if I am causing someone, you know, even if it, like we talk about cutting costs and, you know, using Fiverr and I get it, but also there's people right in the same city that I'm in who do the same work. They charge a lot more money for it, but that's how they eat. I'd rather pay $300 for a graphic designer than pay $20 on Fiverr. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Yeah,
the human part.
it's values, the value system.
Right.
Yeah, we kind of, and I want to make this known on the callers as well. There are questions coming in the chat, and what I'm trying to do is just have the conversation and us answer this through the conversation, and we'll ask the Q&A at the end. But if I could get those answers through conversation now, that's what I'm attempting to do. So adding on to what Camille's saying, how do you all see that? How do you all feel, or what are you doing in your work to ensure that we are developing in our communities equitably and sustainably? So what are the practices that you're doing through your work, or through partnerships with colleagues or other entrepreneurs, that you're ensuring that you are making this equitable and it is sustainable as well?
What I've been doing is I've been assuming that the answers are not inside of the building that I work in. They exist outside in the communities, and that really my charge is to amplify and be a first mover for investment. So I think people have this perception that the URA is a really big, well-funded organization. It is not. And so part of my work is around financial sustainability in the organization. You know, when we give a grant, most times that grant comes back in social returns. It does not come back in liquid returns that we can then take and give to other folks. So for me, when I give a grant, I've got to invest in somebody who's going to do what Camille says, which is put people to work at $300 an hour versus expending those dollars on Fiverr, because you have to build and cultivate an ecosystem, a strong, vibrant ecosystem. That $300 that she spends then becomes that business then doing something else that's going to show up in the ecosystem somewhere else. And so really for me, I think a lot of times practitioners think that, you can create these policies that fix everything, and you can be the saving grace for communities. And that's just fundamentally not true. Communities are already working on the answers. Is anybody paying attention? And so my job is to do one thing very simply: pay attention, amplify what works, invest in it, and bring these up. And when I'm in powerful rooms with powerful people who want Diamante on their roster and all these other things, it's like, invest where I invest, because those are the things that matter to me in the community that I come from and that I live in. And so we won't keep talking about this. I don't want to talk about these problems in 2030. I don't want equitable development to be a goal. I want it to be something that we are sustaining when we get to 2030. And we're not going to be able to do that if we don't shift the paradigm of the work from being the savior towards, investing in the folks that already know what they want and what they need to do. They just need the resources to be equitable in order to do it.
So I just want to expand on that and also double down and say the experts are in the community. They're not us we are support, we are resources. We are not the experts. And I think that when we talk about these conversations we are having right now, even today, what I did not want to do is play catch up for white people. We can't change and this be equitable development if we're always playing catch up. And that to me is where the shift also happens. And it starts with understanding who the experts are in regards to this work. Bernice, how do you see that we could bring the community and support the community and be more sustainable in our work through partnerships and with other folks?
So Soil Sisters, it's just me and my sister and I. We're super small. We haven't even gotten our nursery yet. Like, we are still in the process of doing all that stuff. We're growing seedlings in our basement and do a whole shift to outside and things of that nature. But we just did a Earth Day kind of trial run to see if people would really buy into it. And surprisingly, they did. We had so many people come out and buy seedlings. So after that, we got together with a few different organizations and local businesses to do a garden supply giveaway where everything was free, because what some of the things we were noticing as people were contacting us or saying they wanted to support, they were just like, well, I don't have this or I don't have that. I don't know how, I don't know, just X amount of things. So we gathered up everything we could, from seedlings to seeds to soil to fertilizer to pots and hoses and just anything that we can think of that would be helpful for people to start off their garden. And this was, a weekend after our first sale. We had absolutely no money and gave everything away. And then after seeing that just kind of created this interest where people were understanding that we're not just a business to sell things to you. We want to teach you. We want to be resources for you. We want to be a connection so that you can really thrive and be sustainable in what you're doing. And so here came our summer camp. And the summer camp was important to me because I feel like our way to really breaking some of these issues is through our youth and really getting them up to speed and just kind of getting to them before they get those ideologies of not liking to do this work because it's slave stuff. Like, these kids are really happy to put their hands in the dirt. They're happy to get wet and not get in trouble. They're happy to be able to pull this leaf off a plant and nobody says, oh, those are my flowers. They want to be there. So offering that type of dynamic to our business and not just a for-profit, but having this social and this mission work alongside of our business that makes our community inclusive, and understand that we're not here to just sell stuff to you. Like, we want to make sure that you, your family, and everybody in your household understands how to grow this food, and then taking it beyond just growing food. Like, we're in the circles Catapult, and the people in that cohort have amazing businesses. We've made some connections with people who are going to be lifetime business babes. A queen, she knows it. We are going to be together forever, and she's amazing. Like, we just have this connection that it goes to show, even when you think, okay, well, I'm just growing this plant, when it goes beyond my hands, somebody is taking it and making medicine, somebody's making tea, somebody's making hair products. And for me, that's another stream of business that supports another small business where I can start to grow things for them, and they can access fresh materials and ingredients they need for stuff. And so it just opened up a whole new world of what we can do as a community and how we can support our businesses. And so that's how we imagine, like, making that connection and making sure the community can really, thrive together.
So I just want to really quickly just commend Renice on the work that she's done as a part of the Catapult Startup to Storefront cohort. So that was one of the things that the URA invested in about 2 years ago, originally put in about maybe $10,000. I mean, and it has, and this is what I mean, that was a $10,000 investment initially. But when she gets on this call and she talks about how she's creating opportunities to grow plants that then start to source other businesses in that cohort, that is, I got to fight and argue with people sometimes about why we invest, why I want to invest the way that I invest. But that is a perfect example of why you got to fight to do that.
Thank you. I'm glad it happened, because that cohort, the mentors, the relationships, the people, I mean, it's a growing business family in there, and people are constantly thinking about how they can work together. And even if they can't work together, they're passing off businesses to people like, oh, I know someone who does this. And it's just, you can't get that trying to do it on your own. And there's not many organizations or groups that have that intent, that is intentional to build that relationship. I love it.
Shout out to Circus Greater Pittsburgh and Tammy Thompson.
I was gonna say, she is Tammy Thompson, by the way. So everyone knows who we are talking about. She is Tammy Thompson. So Camille, can you expand on how and back to Renice's example with Mr. Wilson growing green peppers down the street, how can we, whenever we're saying we are also supporting our community through the work that we're doing, this may be through the work that you're doing, but also if a person's not in this space, how can we support the Mr. Wilsons of our neighborhoods so Mr. Wilson can make $1 off of that green pepper?
Pay people what they're worth. That's really what it comes down to. And again, it's being aware, of the value of things. And not the value that's been placed on things, but the actual value. When you talk about food, when you talk about fresh produce, that is valuable. When you talk about the fact that Renice needs a nursery, she needs money for a nursery, put a little extra in the tip jar. You know what I mean? When she goes to crowdfund for something, put the money up. Understand that this is an investment. And I think we have to change the way we look at investments too. Like Diamante talked about this a little bit, but the return on investment is not going to be capital. It's not going to be a financial return. It is going to be a human return. Like, the return on investment is going to look different going forward if we're talking about being sustainable, like truly. And this goes for the university community. This goes for the philanthropic community, for the corporate community. When we talk about being sustainable, you have to look at your return on investments differently. It's not going to be this business is going to make a profit and then I'll get my shares back, or I'll get shares, or I'll get more money back. The return on investment is a more equitable community. It's a community where when people come to visit the city of Pittsburgh, the Hill District is a destination location, just like Squirrelville. So I think that Black people, poor people, and everybody else as well have to look at this in a different lens. The return on investment, he wants to put on a Buzz Lightyear suit, and not because it's Halloween either, just because. But like, people have to pay people so that they can continue. And you know, like you can feel it. You can feel the people who do the work that they do for the benefit of everybody and not just the benefit of themselves. Those are the people who you want to take care of, right? You want to make sure that they can feed their families, that they can pay their mortgage, so that they can continue to do the great work that they do in the community. Like we just have to be cognizant of the players who actually put back into the community. I mean, they put more out into the community than they take from the community. Like, look at those people and make sure to support them however you can, sharing on social media, paying extra for services, giving them pro bono services, you know, letting them know where to get free resources. All of those things help businesses. Again, some people don't know that they have businesses, even though, you know, they're selling, you know, their peppers out of their yard. You know, that's a business, you know, and it doesn't have to be something that's super for profit. It doesn't have to scale to some large, you know, venture, but it's enough for you to, you know, pay for a vacation once a year with you and your family. You know what I mean? Those are the things that we have to look at it a little differently. Capitalism has really jacked us up. So we have to look at things a little differently.
Yeah, the investment conversation is something that we're definitely not having enough and not having differently at all. And in regard, especially when Nisha was talking about scaling her business, not scaling fast, people have this like thought of if I invest in this money, here's my return, and my return is money, more money than what I invested versus I'm investing in my community being better. I'm investing in Mr. Wilson living healthy, Mr. Wilson be able to pay his bills, Mr. Wilson be able to, you know, pay for a field trip for his kids. Like there are so many other things that we need to value, and that goes back to the scarcity and abundance conversation. We need to value things more differently moving forward, and it can't be around what kind of money I'm getting. So I want to also touch on policy. You know, we're foundations, grants, all of these things are regulated by laws. And I think it's disingenuous for us to ignore the gatekeepers and the maestros and all the people pulling the plugs behind or pulling the strings behind the doors. So how can policy making within communities or within companies, how can this help us move towards a more equitable and sustainable economic future? And I'd like to start with Diamante because she's at the URA.
So I think first you talked about a little bit in my my bio about buzzwords. And so I think first of all, we've just got to get over our addiction of hearing ourselves use the words in the language and to very quickly have the conversation, that's fine, but very quickly get to action and implementation. Here's what I know about Pittsburgh. When Pittsburgh wants to do something, when Pittsburgh puts its mind to something, it fixes it. It goes all in or it goes home. We can look at the pursuit of Amazon as evidence of this. There was no long drawn out protracted conversation and 1,000 studies done, none of that. Folks got in a room and they said, we are going to go after this. We are going to fix this. And even if we don't get Amazon, we will get on the radar of other companies that we want to come to this city and to start to do business. And I think that we've got to have that same attitude about how we start to get over some of these equity issues and that we democratize this notion of sustainability. And so that's a policy redress. I think we get a little bit obsessed with policies, and policy is good, but I know a lot of legislation that gets passed. I know a lot of policies that are on the books. We need procedures. We need standard, systematic operating procedures that are done over and over and over again. And the only time that we innovate is when we're trying to improve it and advance something forward. So I think that's a little bit of we get very obsessed with policy making. I am obsessed with placekeeping. I am obsessed with investing in people and trying to unlock innovation and ideas in inobvious places. We keep looking to the same people to talk about the same things, and we're not. Oh, we find the darling to hold up and to make, and that gets tiresome. Like that gets tiresome. And so I think that part of what we've got to do is we've just got to make it. I get a little bit frustrated with this notion of Black excellence. That's just normalcy. Why is it qualified? Like as though there are these different grades of, of Blackness. It is all excellence. It's just if you don't know what you're looking for and you don't know how to find what Camille talked about, find value in things that are beyond the label that people have put into things, we're not going to be able to get out of this really protracted conversation, study, analyze. Let's have one more focus group. Let's have one more panel, one more interview. It's like, no, start doing it. Do it like our lives depend on it, because they do.
I totally agree with Diamante. A lot of my work is basically nonpartisan. I don't encourage or engage in addressing policy first. All the things that I do, we can collect data while we're doing. There's a chicken and an egg we can address at the same time. And folks think too linear and too siloed to be able to process that as well. But I agree with Diamante. We spend too much time on policy making and not enough time on doing. How do you feel about this, Nisha? How do you, in your world, especially with manufacturing and delivering these types of services, there's a lot of regulations in your space, especially around sustainability too, and what makes someone a sustainable business, right? How do you feel policy making is part of this?
Honestly, my simple answer for that is get more people in the room, more people who it affects at every single level. We have too many people who are sort of in this bubble making decisions without having the people who will ultimately be affected by the decision making in the room, voicing their opinions and listening and making them change makers and leaders in these spaces as well. And I think, it goes back to academia and how, certain qualifiers get you in rooms and certain success points and the darling situation. But really, there are so many people that need to be brought into the fold. And these rooms just need to be way more diverse from the top all the way into the every single room needs to be more diverse, in my opinion. And when it comes to sustainable business, just going back to the fact that, like, again, the people who are making the products are the most important people. Like, without the people making the products, you don't. So you want to be able to make sure that you are creating systems and procedures and entry points for those people to be at the table. Because again, if you're a manufacturing space making regulations around the person, people just aren't going to be happy. Like, for me, the way that I've built business is around this idea of like 360 and circularity. So I can't understand how business hasn't been built like this in the first place, and how people who have lived in experiences make decisions on behalf of people who they, are making them on. That's my 2 cents.
Well, what do you think, who's involved in creating these pathways that, when we talk about being more diverse or getting these folks to the room? I hate the table analogy, so we'll use the room. How do you feel about what are the pathways to getting these folks to the room?
White people being more comfortable being in communities and being in community with Black and brown people. I think a lot of times there's like representatives that white people trust and want to talk to, but that's the extent. They don't go and build relationships themselves in community. And I mean, there's a way to do that that's not problematic and not taking from the culture, because there's whole other implications around that. But yeah, I think it's just having more people more comfortable having more conversations with people who don't look like them.
Yeah. I would also like to add something that I do is ask people what communities they're part of and get involved in those community meetings. Go out to the community and meet the folks that are presenting, meet the folks that are the leaders in those community, and just have a conversation and see how you can support them. There's a great question about folks that don't have those monetary resources to support Black and brown communities. Bernice, how would you suggest folks who don't have the funds, because that's a lot of people need money, but I believe there's other things they need too. How would you help folks who don't have the funds to support businesses?
Camille mentioned one, like sharing information. If you know that I have an event going on, if you've seen a post that I put up, share it. That doesn't require any money. A lot of times people can use help, volunteer, help out. Like I said, me and my sister are doing seedlings, and it's just the two of us. When we get ready for our pop-up sale, we're carrying over 50 trays to 2 trucks and then set up at another place with a table. And, it's not, businesses don't want to go and ask, because you don't want someone to feel like, they're working and they should be compensated. We don't have the finances to pay either, but in exchange, there's always something. Like, we have seedlings, like, here, take these, or, so showing up in ways, there's plenty of ways. Even offering some of your expertise advice when you see them working on something and something that they're doing. Like, we're growing things and there's varieties. We don't know all of the varieties that are out there. And I'm sure there's some master growers who know some things that work well to our climate and just different things. So offering information, sharing knowledge that you have so that a business can be stronger is a way to add value to a business without using any monetary values. And I would say, and word of mouth, it goes along with sharing information and everything, but that's just powerful when we speak of our communities and whenever we talk about our businesses, even if we haven't been able to support them, when people know that there's people speaking about, I can say that has been one thing that's been instrumental for Soil Sisters. It has to be word of mouth. Not everybody in the city has purchased seedlings from us. A lot of people will even say, like, I'm not buying anything I can't grow, but I just love your name and I want to buy a pen, or it's just different stuff like that. So word of mouth goes a long way, and holding us accountable. You know what I mean? Like, I am not one to shy away from being held accountable, because if it was something to you, it can very well be something to someone else. And I would like to try to fix that. I would like to work on that. And as a business owner, you have to stand up to that and make that a part of your values, being held accountable for what you do, because we're human. I can very well be wrong. I have had wrong tags in pots. Okay. People wanted a squash and got a cucumber. I am sorry. Come back for your squash. Keep the cucumber. It happens. We're human. And it's just like, don't go and bash me. Don't talk about me. Just come and tell me, because we don't have, it's hard to get the support as it is. And as soon as you get one bad review, now here goes everybody talking about, you know what? And my plants was dry. Oh, y'all, like, don't do that. Don't start nitpicking. And so those are some of the things I would say would be a good way to support our businesses without having to spend any money.
Yeah, I mean, and I took that question a little bit differently. Like, you can tell people, pay people what they're worth. What if they don't have it to pay? I make room for free. I was about to cuss. I make room for free things, because I understand that not everybody can afford things. Like, for Cocopreneur, honestly, I offered a free listing because I don't think Black people should have to pay for it anyway. I think that the system that created this structure should have to pay for it. So I really try not to charge people for things that I feel like they should not be paying for anyway, like charging people for air. I don't think it's right. You know what I mean? So it's like, I make room for, and Bernice, I feel like this is something that goes for you. Like, if you know a family is not hungry, I can't see you not giving them potatoes so that they can eat. You know what I mean? So I think that that's part of the community part. Like, that's, again, that human part is the most important part for me. And knowing that people have circumstances, they have issues, they go through things, but also understanding that it is cyclical. You give them a bag of potatoes for free this week, and a month later they're paying you extra for something later down the line. That's what community is built on for me.
Yeah, I would say I experience that the most. We do things for, like, Westinghouse and different groups, but I experienced it the most this year when we participated in mask making for the community. I mean, the way that the community banded together, I was like, I don't even know why I looked anywhere else. The community supported us in ways that got us through those first 2 months of the pandemic that I couldn't even imagine. I mean, from coming and picking up a mask and paying for 3 extra ones for someone. And I mean, it just worked out. And it was amazing to see how just the community, not, no one was overseeing or providing this large sum of money, but it was all these small amounts of support. And it wasn't just, I mean, we were giving masks and then they would tell another person and they would come get a mask and they would tell another person and that person would pay for masks. So it was just amazing to see. And so to go back to that idea of like people first and community first, and when you're truly doing efforts that are in community with people, then it works out. And the other stuff, like the larger amounts of capital are needed in a different space, like when it's time to grow and for marketing and things like that. But there's so many different ways. And I think thinking about business differently, when I talk about sustainable business, like I'm trying to convince people that business is not a linear thing. It's not, again, going back to returns and all of that. There's so many different ways, and who I am and how I participate in business is not going to be in the way that you feel most comfortable with. It's going to be the way that fits my lifestyle, because that's why I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah. If I could talk very quickly about accessing capital, because that's one of the things that the URA is that's germane to the mission, is providing access to capital. One of the things so we have a microloan program, and that program was really a program that was sort of innovative, because you couldn't, other than a Kiva campaign or doing some crowdsourcing, you really couldn't get access to performative capital that would start to build the muscles in the business for the business to eventually grow. And so we were offering $100,000 loans to businesses, and businesses needed $5,000 to get started or to get some original inventory. And so that micro loan program, so the URA does not make all of the interest and any fees or any application fees that are gathered or rolled into the next loan for the next business. So every time somebody repays that loan, it makes it possible to give the next business who's starting to grow a loan. So we don't recapture any of that money. You won't find it padding, the URA's balance sheet. Is really a mission-driven vehicle. And so the reason why I'm highlighting that is because when COVID happened, a lot of Black businesses needed emergency funding. And, we were not in a position to do, large grants, because we had a lot of people who needed loans, and eventually you want that money to be able to be repaid to the next business. So we needed to make it sustainable. And so every time you pay back your microloan to the URA, you are basically investing in another minority or woman-owned business. That's the way to think about it. And so now we've actually looked at what we found is that the assumption was that, Black folks weren't coming to the URA for loans because they didn't have good credit. All of these fallacies. And what we found is that they weren't coming because the products weren't approachable, and we weren't communicating with those businesses in their terms. That micro loan made people feel comfortable, but a lot of our loans have gone to folks opening up storefronts and doing much bigger deals than what was originally anticipated. And so, with the help of the PNC Foundation, because we've been thinking about this notion of creating sustainable business environments, they've provided a loan fund that will allow minority businesses to start to scale and grow. So that's a lot more capital with a competitive interest rate, very low fees. So the focus is on growing that business over a 7-year track. And when that money comes back, it allows us to start to, again, invest in the next business. So I think that access to capital and creating instruments that actually meet the needs of those businesses and helping those businesses understand how, it's great to get a business grant, and we did a lot of granting during COVID. But the thing about creating sustainability is that when your business is up and running, and then you can now know that you have invested in the next wave of entrepreneurs coming in, that is really how we build an ecosystem that's not dependent on the system. This is dependent upon the Black business community. It's not dependent on me or the URA. We put in the initial investment. You guys are the ones who are making it regenerative.
Thank you, Diamante, for explaining that investment piece as well. I want to also add bartering, and to put some language to and I think all 5 of us, I know I worked with all of y'all, so looking at it as, I don't have the money for this service, you don't have the money for this service, but I can provide this to you and you can provide this to me. Let's barter, let's swap, let's figure out a way to balance this sheet without money being involved. And I think that whenever folks, especially in our community and Black community, and this is something me and my siblings do constantly, is supporting each other in ways that we would have to pay for that other service. So I would just like to add bartering, and we've already spoke about cooperative economics, but looking into building more co-ops as well. So there's a very interesting question. I'm kind of torn on asking the question, but I want you all to talk about things that you are doing that you would like to share out with the community, the folks that are on the call, and speak about something that you're doing in your business or you're doing in your work that you want to get just more messaging out and share with folks.
We talked about this. You have to call.
I'm going to cede my time to you guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually cede my time to the entrepreneurs because I think it's so important to get that out on these platforms. So you guys take my time and do a plug for yourself, please.
All right, we'll start with Nisha. Sorry, I was literally thinking like we had this conversation.
So, as we've been growing over the past 5 years, we've really been examining our business model and who our core, we have core customers, but who our core person for our social network, the person that works from home is. And it really is this retired or, older person. And we've been trying to tap into that community a lot larger, and people who maybe looking for a second career and maybe, sewing at home and could use some flexible work from home income. So my ask today is if you have anyone that at home with a sewing machine who loves to sew and would like to be a part of our social network, we're growing that part. And they could reach out to myself or our production manager. I could drop that into the chat. But that's about it. And just follow us on all of our platforms. @Knotsland is everything that we're on. Thank you.
Rainy, share with us what Soil Sisters is up to.
So this Sunday, we will be at Highland Park with a queen for her kidney walk, and we'll be vending. So you can come and get some seedlings there. Royally Fit will have some amazing things there. And I'm not sure of all the other vendors, but the other 2 events she said has been amazing. We are moving forward with the nursery project. We got the city approval to go ahead and do that. And so we're meeting with some contractors to finalize a budget to submit for a loan and get forward with that. So eventually we'll be talking about, once that's up and running, help on who wants to come out and volunteer and do that sort of stuff. But more futuristically speaking, we intend to have a workshop or 2 in the up and coming months, and that's just basically taking this opportunity to talk about the growing season next year and just how you can prepare, how you can plan for it, and just getting a good relationship with our customers and what they can expect from Soil Sisters in the whole entire growing season to come, because we had a short season. We just popped up in late spring and just kept pushing forward. So 2020 will be an actual full year of Soil Sisters and getting to tap into all 3. I say 3 growing season because we plan to sell into fall as we have now. And just teaching people that they can grow. We still have good weather. We haven't had a first frost yet. If you like greens, they would be so happy outside right now to be in this cooler, dark, rainy weather, and you would have some delicious greens for Thanksgiving, even Christmas, or that stuff. So we're just getting ready for that. So just follow us on social media, because we share our updates and stuff there. We just got a new website, and that's soilsistersplantnursery.com. And you can buy stuff there, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Camille.
So Cocopreneur, Greenwood Week just passed. So the Black Business Conference just passed. So we're on a planning cycle for that. Cocopreneur, the directory is going through a 3.0 phase right now. So the thing that I really need from y'all is a little bit of grace. Okay. So if the website looks a little janky every now and again, it's because we're going through some trials, trying to do some updates and add some features. And I'm trying to connect with more, with other businesses and other people who are trying to create tools for the community to make Cocopreneur useful for them as well. So if they are looking to do things to help Black businesses, how can Cocopreneur support that? How can Cocopreneur make things easier for you so you're not starting from scratch with a brand new list of businesses? You can just get that information from Cocopreneur. So really trying to find a way to be more of a staple and a pillar in like the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And the thing I really need is just um, I'm working, so don't expect me to answer everything right away, or don't expect for me to answer your DMs when you hit me up. I'm working on some kind of structural things for Cocopreneur to make it more sustainable. So yeah, that's all I really need is some space, and visit the site, see what's there so far. Find a business and patronize. That's the best thing that you could do for us.
And send a business there too as well. If a person doesn't have a digital footprint, this is your opportunity. Please yourself a cocopreneur. And so I wanted to end on one last question, and I hate the catch up conversations, but what is the danger of our community not becoming more sustainable? And their question is sustainable, meaning we as Black people and our community. What is the stake there? So, Diamante, if you'd like to start out with that.
Sure. I think what's at stake is perpetual codependency, and that it is counter to it's counter to a natural state, meaning that we are always looking to be included, to be waiting for somebody else to figure out how comfortable they are with diversity, how comfortable they are with complete, like with a complete picture, a diverse picture. And so I think that we've got to just be a little bit autonomous and make an assumption that nobody else will do it, that it will be us and it will be imperfect, and we will have to exercise grace, and that we will have to make sacrifices. I think another thing that we were going to talk about here is behavior, and why do people behave the way that they behave, and are they responsible? And what I will say is that broken systems will have you behaving in a broken way. And so everything that we are and everything that we aspire to be cannot be in response to what we know is a flawed, broken system. It is okay to set our own standards. It is okay to have our own value system. It is not counterculture to do that. I think that is what systems need in that. So what's at stake is our future, our children, our grandchildren, to look back on these moments and say, these folks did a lot of talking about some interesting things, and they'll pull up these archives and they'll say, but nobody ever got to work. And so just making sure that we're being intentional about that work and those investments, and not waiting for people to agree and for them to get the language to say the right thing and be the right kind of ally. And, that's a waste of time. Don't invest any of that time in all of this pontificating and bickering and trying to get corporate, like it's not worth it. And we have got to be the savior that we seek. And I think that we can do that. And a lot of it just starts with shifting values, shifting how we invest, and making sure that we just get back to basics. I mean, when we get like this, we need a hard reset on society, a control, alt, delete. We've gotten too complicated. We've gotten too complex. Let's get back to basics, and let's be the role models and the folks that our communities and that our children can depend on, and expect more from ourselves than we do white systems. Even white systems that are trying their very, very best is not going to be that's not going to supersede a Black people and a Black person in top form. That's my contribution.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up. I will say to fit that into the larger system, once we can get our system together, everything else will fall into place, in my opinion. I think that once we take care of what we have going on, we then have a more resolute power to make demands in other spaces. When you can say, you can't get through here without talking to all of us. You can't have this thing happen without convening with the collective. We then have a different type of, like, when we talk about sustainability and about not exploiting Black bodies, you can't do that if we all are on one accord about what this is. You can't come in here and try to pay people pennies on a dollar for this work. We don't allow that in this community. I think that will be what really takes us to the next point. That's what's at stake.
Yeah. What about you, Rainey?
I would say for me, you mentioned like the neighborhoods we represented. So Belsuver is my native neighborhood. I grew up there, born and raised, moved away for a bit. Now I'm back in the area. And it's so nostalgic riding down the street and not seeing, well, having this feeling of what was there, but not seeing it. And it's like, we all know what happened in East Liberty and how fast that changed and how the community just like was, in a blink of an eye, a whole totally different place for the natives who resided there. And then some people were displaced. They don't even live there. So now they have to visit their old neighborhood. I can see a slow transformation in my area where Allentown and Mount Oliver and, even Bonaire is just starting to have different buzzwords and articles and conversations about them. That goes to show that there's an attention being brought to this area. And I'm like, my neighborhood could be at risk right now. What do we own? What are we doing with our vacant buildings? How are we cleaning up our neighborhood? What programming do we have going on? The school shut down. What are we doing with our kids? We're, basketball court is painted, but like, do we have basketball engagement activities? We had community day and sometimes it goes through, some years it's off, COVID happened, so it didn't work out, but it's like, how do we have, or what do we have in place so that whenever someone does come, we can say, no, we're not taking pennies on a dollar because we're already doing this. We already have this covered. And when none of it is, and somebody comes in and say, well, I can do this because you're not doing this with this building, or you can use a coffee shop here on Climax. And it's like, coffee shop on Climax, we don't nobody even live on Climax. Like, where's the houses? What are we going to do with a coffee shop here? And so it's like, a coffee shop would be amazing, but first, can we make sure our houses are together? Can we make sure that our recreational center down the street has programming for our kids for after school like it used to? I used to live at the rec. Warrington was like my second home for holidays, after school, summertime. There was so much going on, and my neighborhood has 3 community centers that can house programming and do sorts of things. And we can sit down and talk about how we develop our community more. So I feel like our communities are at risk. And when our communities are at risk, that goes for our businesses. Where are our businesses going if we don't have our communities? So, there's a lot at risk, but I'm really fortunate to be on this call with these women who have an idea of how to get it back and have that fire of action, because I feel like I was on this call for some of the boards and some of the committees that I'm on, but I was only there to learn. I was there as a person who was observing and figuring out for myself, well, how do I translate this information and bring it back to my neighborhood? And we figure out, what do we do about this? Because nobody's here, and this is the only way we're going to find out. So like, my name is on these listings, but I haven't been there for a long time, and I don't know how all this operates. I don't know all these people who are sitting in these seats, but I'm just like, I'll be here. What time is the next meeting? And we'll figure it out. Researching what this policy is, or reading what I'm having to, backtrack on information because I don't know all of it, but that's not stopping me from what I feel is important and what is at risk and what will happen if we don't step up.
Mm-hmm. Diamante might have to hop off here, so I want to thank her for her time.
Thank you so much. This has been incredible. You guys are amazing, and I look forward to continuing to work with you. And if there's anything that I can support you in micro or macro ways, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I extend that invitation to the audience as well. All right, thank you guys.
Diamante.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you want to finish up, Camille, wrap it up in the next 60 seconds here. Let us know what's at risk.
I think I did mine, right? Everything's at risk. Like, no. No, but seriously, your life is at risk. when we talk about our water, our food and food deserts around this city, healthcare. Come on now, Allegheny County, racism is a public health crisis here for a reason. You know what I mean? So literally your life is at stake. And I think that solidarity piece is going to save us. I think that we have everything we need within our bounds, like right here at arm's length. We just need to come together in order to really create these sustainable systems. Like we have, it's like aquaponics, right? Like each thing feeds the other and then creates this system where everybody is all good. This is Buzz Lightyear. So yeah, I think our lives literally at stake. They said hi, Edward.
And I just want to chime in and say, what's at risk is ownership. It's our communities, and we don't have enough ownership as is. And a lot of times in these rooms, people want to come in and fix things and fix our communities. And our communities aren't broken because we want them to be broken. They're broken because of lack of investment in us as individuals, as families, as businesses, and as communities. And a lot of times
taking from our communities, right? It's
and
not
taking,
even just us, right?
Exactly. So, what's really at risk is us and our communities. And how do you shift the conversation from like, we can go in and fix this and add these things and make it greater? And well, I didn't even mean to say that. Sorry. I don't even like to say anything even remotely. But yeah, honestly, that it is that mentality of like, oh, I see this thing and I want to make it better. And really, how do you start within and invest in the people and the businesses that are there first, and then build around that? It's never about like, oh yeah, development's bad and all these things are bad, but start with the people and what do you need to make your community better, and then go out.
Yes, totally agree with that, Nisha. I want to wrap it up. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you were able to get something from this conversation. All of us have emails. Please reach out to us if you have any more questions. A lot of work that I'm doing with Leaders of Change is very people-centered, especially in marginalized communities. And I'm definitely looking for folks to collaborate with and do some mutual aid efforts. So please feel free to reach out to me as well. I'll let Leslie wrap it up.
Thank you, Amber. I only want to say two things. One, to thank you all again for your time, for joining us here today. It's a much needed conversation in many circles, and appreciate you all coming to do that here. Also want to especially thank Amber for co-creating this event with us. It would not have been possible without your leadership and partnership on this. So I really appreciate that. And the second thing I'll say is we're going to make this recording available as soon as possible on the PIT CSB YouTube channel. And I would encourage everyone to share that link with your networks, with people who need to hear. I can't imagine there's anything in this conversation that people don't need to hear, right? So share it with everyone you know on your channels, in your networks. And with that, again, thank you all, and have a good afternoon. Get to work.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.